Development of books coming out like the Da Vinci Code. What do you think about that?
Well, the Da Vinci Code, it's interesting because that Da Vinci Code caused such an uprising. It caused a big stir in what that was about. And if you look at the time scale of Anunnaki story and Da Vinci Code, the Da Vinci Code is actually only a small portion after what would be Anunnaki 1, this first one Anunnaki, the first movie. It would really be from the time that the next movie, Anunnaki 2, ends, which is after the flood. There's a small portion in there which is where we transition from BC to AD, basically. And the Da Vinci Code, that whole story, encompasses from that up into our semi-modern day civilization. It leaves the whole backstory behind it wide open. There's thousands and thousands of years of history behind there that doesn't even touch. So in the scope of things, it's a very controversial issue, the Da Vinci Code. But when you look at the scope of what we're actually talking about and the scope of time and the scope of humanity's beliefs in a belief system, I think this story is much bigger.
You know how, let's say, the Christian churches, and especially the Catholic Church, reacted to the Da Vinci Code. Do you have any idea how they could react to one Anunnaki, two Anunnaki, and so on?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what their reaction's going to be. We've already been banned in the Philippines, for what I understand. We haven't even released the movie yet. There was somebody who mentioned on one of the boards that once the movie's made, we're not allowed there. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it sort of sets the tone for the way it's going to be. There's a lot of controversy on the subject. I think that there's definitely going to be we're definitely going to have our share of outcry for the topic in general. There's an old saying that when people don't understand something, their tendency is to say no.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure we will get that. But anybody who takes the time to actually look into what we're saying and look into what we're quoting, we're actually not even taking a position ourselves on what is. We're just trying to retell a story that's been, if not completely squelched, pushed under the carpet so that it's not made known. I mean, for a story that the entire Bible is based upon, or the majority of the Bible is based upon, the well-known parts of the Bible are based upon, to not be known by the majority of people is kind of an interesting phenomenon right there.
7 years ago, in the year 2000, then Zecharia Sitchin, he went to Rome, and he talked there with Corrado Balducci. Maybe you know about him.
I've heard about that.
Yes. You know, Corrado Balducci, he says, of course the universe, there are many civilizations all over the place.
What was interesting about, I don't know if it was that conversation or a conversation that followed with the Catholic Church, was that, from what I understand, the Catholic Church had made a statement in that realm of time saying that for there to be other life on other planets would not be inconsistent with the religious precepts of the religion. And that brings us to sort of another point why, to me personally, I don't really understand what the big outrage would be. Although I do understand it's almost a definite thing. The ancient stories of the Anunnaki talk about the Anunnaki talking within themselves about there being a greater creator, which brings up another interesting point. When I first started the script for this movie, and when I first started doing some initial testing of what people's thoughts were, there was this big swell of people who seemed to pit creationalism against evolutionary starts. And what we found was, as I got farther and farther in the book, that the two fit together almost perfectly. There's no reason why there can't be creationalism and evolution, and in fact, they support each other. They support that they're both right. So what we sort of became our coined term with the movie is that creationalism and evolutionism is you're both right and you're both wrong. It became sort of the coined term. everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
The Anunnaki created us in their image. So what's your opinion about this?
Well, you know, that's another really, that was one of my most fascinating topics, and from the research and the studying I've done on the topic, it's more than just a simple question. It's more than just a simple question of did they create us. It's a question of the nature of celestial creation also. According to Sitchin and some other scientists, there's some phenomenon in our immediate galaxy that don't make a lot of sense. The moon and the Earth being next to each other are one of those things that don't make a lot of sense. The composition's not right. The size of the moon compared to the Earth is not right. So there, I think it's pretty well determined that there was some sort of collision that happened on Earth at some point in history that cut away a piece of the Earth and caused the continents to do this shifting to fill the gap or to replace the gap that was left. And I think that they even believe that somewhere in the Pacific Ocean is the point of impact where that gap would have taken place because of the depth and whatnot. That collision could very well have taken place with the planet that the Anunnaki eventually developed on, that they came to be on. So if that be the case, we're really the same particulate matter, the same DNA, the same molecules of creation. We're probably on both planets at the same time, meaning that we could have developed from a similar chain, from a similar construct, but they developed this way and we developed that way. Similar to an animal that develops, you take two animals that are the same species and put them in two different places, they will eventually evolve into different species. They may have evolved ahead of us and we were behind, and they did a little genetic upgrade to bring us up to speed with them. But I don't think it's that far-fetched to believe that they created us, creationalism in some manner, that a God created us, but yet evolutionary, that we were actually came to be anyway, that we were evolving up to that point to begin with. So that's kind of what I was talking about, you know, evolutionary theory and creational theory sort of working together, not against each other.
Erik van Däniken, and he said in I think it was his first book, were the gods astronauts, right? I think that was the title. Now one of his latest books is The Gods Were Astronauts. So now Sitchin says the fact that we have been created by aliens, that does not mean that there is no divine power in
Absolutely.
the universe.
And in fact what I said before was exactly that, was that there were texts that show the Anunnaki talking about not feeling good about playing, in quotations, playing God. They had their own feelings about not tampering with God's work, let's call it. So I think they had some sort of higher being type of thought process going on there too.
The god Anu, I think he was the father of Enki and Enlil, the two gods who came to this planet to colonize this planet here.
Right.
He was not in favor of being created a being as a Lulu Amelu, which means primitive worker.
Right.
I think he was against it, right?
There was many of them that were against it, and if you, and again, these things may sound outlandish to people listening, but if you would take them and put them into a construct that we can identify with, let's say we take a primitive chimpanzee or orangutan, and now we splice our DNA with it and get this hybrid primate, I think a lot of people would have a problem with that, which is already apparent in the cloning issue that's going on around the world. And then if you would start drawing a parallel where they created mankind and then started forming relationships and families and procreating with these beings they created, once people started forming relationships and procreating with these hybrid chimpanzee or orangutan primates, I think you'd have a lot of people throwing their arms up and having a temper tantrum with that too. So you can definitely see the parallels and why it doesn't sound that far-fetched when you draw those kind of parallels.
Alvin Toffler, do you know about him? He wrote a book in the 70s, Future Shock. And he said that we will go into a period of time that there will be many, many new developments, and because of this, many people not being able to cope with all those new developments and being shocked by all this new information coming up. And how do you see that?
It's shocking, you know, to know that I would be lying if I said that once I started digging into all this, that my whole perception of what many people's lives are based on has changed dramatically over the years. When you see the original scripts and the original transcripts of what these stories that people are believing in were based upon, and it doesn't change necessarily your morals, it just changes your outlook on the rituals that have been created, which we call religion, and really, I would say the rituals of it are the thing that become change for people, and would be maybe changed by it, because and that's not to say that tradition isn't good. I think that tradition is a good thing. Tradition, the difference between tradition and ritual, in my mind, is that ritual is based on something you feel you have to do. You have to do this because of what the Bible says, what this religion says, what that religion says. Tradition is something you do because it's part of your history, and you do because you enjoy doing it, and because it celebrates your history. So I think that there is a transition there for me personally between what I see people doing as ritual and as something that they feel they have to do, and then when you look at the original scripts, you say, well, you know what? Everything they're believing, everything that they're looking at is based on something that's not the story that they're actually reading. It's based on something that says something totally different. So, you know, if you tell somebody that a friend walked into a store, and in that store, the person at the counter picked up a gun and shot the person next to him, well, that sounds like a horrible event. If you leave out the portion where the person that came in was an escaped criminal who was also holding a gun, the whole concept of the story changes. Well, people are reading and believing in things that the story that was actually the derivation is completely different than what they're believing in. So, in a way, it's people have been sold somewhat of a false bill of goods.
Do you have a certain goal with those three movies?
The goal really is, again, and we sort of discussed this with some of the other things we were talking about earlier, which is rather than a sensationalist clashing of ideas, which is what most people will immediately do, because when people don't understand, they say no. And rather than this clashing of ideas, the more you look into it, the more you research it, the more you start reading and figuring out both sides, you realize that it's not two clashing ideas, it's one idea with pieces left out on both sides. So you wind up with something where it really goes together in perfect harmony. It's not conflicting at all. The pieces fit together very nicely, and there's room for both. I guess that's my whole point, my whole statement, if there is one, is not to cause conflict. My whole point is that we're all right and we're all wrong. And once people see that, think of how many differences are immediately resolved. Think of how many conflicts in belief systems are resolved once everybody realizes that we're all telling the same story and not different stories with opposing viewpoints.
You were telling me the Lost Book of Enki, this story, will also be somewhere woven into one of your movies, right?
It covers a lot of the same material, and we've talked to Mr. Sitchin and have had a correspondence with him about it, and it's something that in the future we have a story that's our own story for the second movie, which covers it strictly from the source material, meaning strictly from the Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis, the Ziusudra epic, the Gilgamesh epic. We've taken that from all of those Kramer's books and all the people who did the original Mesopotamian transliteration work. We've taken and made our own story from that. The thing I enjoyed about Sitchin's book was that he had this human side to it, and if that's a good word for it, but he had a human side to it and a